Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of Yarn and Black. Just before I do start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm calling in from. I'm in Baldwin Q on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay respect to the elders past and present, and I'd like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that are with us today. Today, I'm really excited. I've got a great friend and a special guest, Sammy, joining us. Hi, Sammy.
Hi.
Uh, So I might just start straight away and go, Sammy, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and where you're from?
Okay, yep. So I'm a proud Taungurung woman of the Kulin Nation. I grew up in a suburb in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, in Bulleen. Um, and then, I've spent a lot of my school holidays up on country where my ancestors are from. So my grandparents and my great grandparents and beyond that, they were all born on country, which is they were on a property about 20 kilometres from the town of Yea, or what we know of as Yea now. So that's my connection. The Yea wetlands is a wonderful place. I grew up, all my school holidays up there, exploring and being on country. And I guess my career-wise, I've spent 30 years in early childhood education, in childcare and kindergarten, as a mothercraft nurse. So I was the last class to go through Swinburne University as a mothercraft nurse. So, moving forward from that, if you wanted to do something like that, was actually midwifery.
Yeah.
So that shows you my age.
So after school, was that your first experience? Was that your first qualification?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what made you want to do mothercraft?
Well, I actually started off at Melbourne Uni. Mum pushed me into that because she said, you're not going to sit around the house once you finish school. And so she found out, she got in touch with the Aboriginal liaison officer at Melbourne University. And, so I got into the kindergarten teaching course there, did that for 12 months. And Mum was working part-time in a childcare centre and they needed some help. So I went and did a shift there, and I really liked the environment because you're surrounded by other co-workers, whereas kindergarten, you're the one responsible for 30-odd children. So I kind of went, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So I dropped out of uni. I got they offered me a 12 months maternity leave position at this childcare centre. And it just felt right for me, having support from other co-workers. And then I got into Swinburne University doing the mothercraft course. So I was able to do that part-time. So work were really good. They allowed me to leave at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, and I'd go off to Swinburne, and I'd be there till like 9 o'clock at night every Thursday.
Wow.
And I did that for 4 years until I was qualified.
Yeah. So it did take you 4 years to study that?
Yep.
Yeah. At the time, how much Aboriginal perspectives were in the course when you studied it?
None.
None?
None. There was no resources.
Yeah.
If I wanted to share my culture, there was really no resources that you could access. And it wasn't till, oh gosh, I'm not even sure what year it was, but the local council had started to put together a box that you could hire from them for free and use. Like, I think there was a doll and a book. It was not really a lot in it, but it was stuff that you could use in the room. And so I had this beautiful little Aboriginal doll in the kinder room. And, I spoke to everybody in the staff meeting, and one of the other staff turned around and went, I'm not having that in my room.
Ooh.
So I was a bit shocked. That was my first experience of, racism, really.
Yeah. And that's, was that a early childhood educator, or they were mothercraft nurse as well?
No, she was a mothercraft nurse.
As well.
Yeah.
Wow. Jump a number of years now, do you find that there is a lot or more Aboriginal perspectives being taught in early childhood?
Definitely. The early childhood sector are doing a lot of work. And of course, there's a lot of resources out there now too for them to access to be able to, celebrate and share culture. And I'm fortunate enough to be working for Yarn Strong Sister at the moment, where I do online workshops with early childhood services, and those workshops are about embedding Aboriginal pedagogy into their program. So, and I'm getting such positive response from these educators who are really wanting to, learn and do it respectfully. So, it's actually, we've come a long way.
So I want people, and I will advertise your workshops kind of on the YouTube channel. But just one question is, if someone said to you, where do I start? Like, where would I start embedding? What's your one thing that you would say, where would I start?
Putting the flag up, making your space welcoming. And just by having an acknowledgement up and a flag up. So if an Aboriginal person walks in, a parent walks in and, is looking at putting their children into that service, all of a sudden they're going to feel welcomed straight away by seeing the flag and the acknowledgement. They're like, okay, they're on board. They're acknowledging, who I am, who my culture is. And I guess that's a very good start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A term that often gets thrown around a lot is, there's a couple of terms, but one of the terms is cultural safety. Yeah. What does cultural safety mean to you?
I guess it's about, well, first of all, people need to have knowledge of culture to be able to show respect. And I think a lot of it's down to education. And that safe space comes from people who are educated and willing to be, I suppose, open to learning about culture, and therefore they're not just going to unknowingly say something that's racist because they've invested into it, they're learning about it, and then they're creating that safe space because they're thinking about what they're going to say. Yeah. They're not blurting stuff out that can be offensive. So, yeah.
Do you think, it's kind of my belief, I try to when I talk to early childhood educators or teachers sometimes, to go, when they go, oh, I don't know what to do, I normally try to say, try something. Just don't do anything because you think that's going to be offensive, or you're not comfortable just yet doing it, but have a go, have a try.
Yeah, I actually just said that recently, and it was to do with language. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we haven't been, doing it because, we're not sure how to pronounce it. And I go, well, when you think about it, our language is an oral history. So we're trying to learn it from a written word that never existed. Mm. So however you can pronounce that is, it's better than not doing it. It's better than not saying it. So, we're trying to, bring back our language and, revive it and reclaim it. And the only way we're going to do that is by trying to speak it. And I think, my generation, we're learning it. The next generation, the children, they're hearing it because, how do we learn language? We grow up hearing it from a bubble, from our parents. So my thinking is that my children hopefully are interested in learning it, and then their children are going to grow up hearing it, and they're probably going to be able to speak it better than what I can, because they've grown up hearing it. So that's what, I do encourage people just to have a go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another word that gets thrown around a lot recently is truth-telling. What does truth-telling mean to you, and how do you encompass truth-telling into the stories that you share?
I guess it's because the government's, they've spread a lot of lies about our culture. One I can think of is about our skin colour, calling us half-castes. What is a half-caste? What does that mean? Truth-telling is about just telling those stories because the government have kind of brainwashed us in a way with certain things and their policies they deliberately wanted to breed out the colour, and by, calling us names was their way of, I don't know, I guess controlling us. And I guess now I've got a photo of myself and my two older sisters. It's black and white. And my older sister is clearly dark hair and dark skin.
Mm.
And here I am, a little blondie. Same dad, same mum. That's diversity in families, you know. I mean, what is a modern day Aboriginal person here in Victoria?
Yeah.
You know, does that mean I'm less Aboriginal than my older sister because she looks different, because she's got the skin colour and the dark hair? You know, it's about just thinking about those past policies that, you know, they were quite successful in breeding out the colour, and it was deliberate. But does that mean we're still not Aboriginal? And it's tricky because, you know, I've spent my whole life, I can be a bit of a chameleon. I don't have to identify if I don't feel safe to do so. But, you know, it's a spiritual feeling. It's really hard to describe how, you know, knowing that, you know, my ancestry and my culture, but then on the outside, I don't look it. So it's a tricky space. I had someone recently say to me, "Oh, there's no Aboriginal people down on the Mornington Peninsula. That's where I live."
Yeah.
And I looked at them and I go, "Well, how do you know that?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't see them around the shops." I'm like, but what was he expecting to see? Like, I was just like really puzzled. I was like, did he expect someone to be walking around in a lap and ochre on their face and holding a spear? Like, I don't know, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's that perception, you know, that, you know, breaking those barriers, like, you know, what do we look like?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's due to government policy.
Yeah. And do you think people are more willing to listen now and take on board? Are you still finding that there is some sort of resistance against it?
I think there's a bit of both. You know, I had someone, an elderly person, say to me recently, "Oh, we don't do acknowledgements anymore. Everyone's sick of that." I was just really like, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." But that's the older generation. It's their way of thinking, whether it's due to, you know, they didn't grow up being educated on culture, so they don't really understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then you look at the referendum. Well, you know, why did it fail? Is
Yeah.
it because people aren't educated, or are they just racist?
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, there's a bit of both out there. I can see a lot of positives, but there is still that underlying horrible negative stuff that you get every now and again from people.
Yeah. And the referendum was a big thing.
Oh,
And
it was huge.
I
It's
know that
exhausting.
it crushed me, the
Mm.
result. How did you feel about the result and the weeks following that?
I guess I kept on changing from, "Oh, this is really great, this is really positive," to, "I don't think this is going to happen." Like, I kept changing how I was feeling about the whole process.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people going, you know, that's that stupid ad that they put on, "If you don't know, say no." Like, that was just like, I was just like, really? Like, how do they allow this on TV? Like, this is just
If you don't
ridiculous.
know, find the effing hell out.
Um, yeah, so I was really gutted, actually. And
Mm.
I had to go into work the next day, and I had all of these allies coming in apologising. And I just wanted to say, like, go away. I have to
Yeah.
actually be here. I have to work, and I don't need to hear it.
Yeah.
It was really hard. It
Yeah.
really was. Yeah, because I just felt let down by the whole of Australia.
And we're
Yeah.
coming up to 12 months now. This is like 12 months later. And I don't think non-Indigenous Australia realizes the effect that that still has on many of us.
Yep.
And they,
Because
and
they've
they,
forgotten about it. They don't have to think about it anymore.
yeah,
Yep. But we do. We think about it every day.
yeah. What's your favorite thing that you love to do with young people?
Wow. I guess sharing my knowledge.
Mm.
You know, I do a lot of workshops with children. You know, I've done workshops for Koori Heritage Trust, for VACA. I used to work for VACA doing an after-school program where I did Indigenous dance with Indigenous students, and that was really rewarding. You know, we put together 3 dances and we actually performed it, and it was really. It's just, I think sharing knowledge is really important. If we don't share what we know, what's the point? Our culture will die if we don't keep sharing. And I feel that's my role. I didn't grow up with it. Dad didn't find out he was Aboriginal till he was 40 because his mum didn't talk about it. There was a lot of shame around identifying, and she went through hard times at school, and her own dad, so my great grandfather, he didn't even learn to read and write because he was Aboriginal, so they didn't allow him in school. So so I just don't know where I was going with that.
No, that's okay. I think the question is what do you like about teaching young people?
So because I didn't grow up with it, I've just been a sponge. I've been learning. I've been taking the time to listen to elders, to listen to aunts and uncles. And being involved in Tanderrum was the most amazing experience because I was able to connect with all of the Kulin Nation. So the 5 mobs that live around Melbourne. I forgot to acknowledge the Bunwurrung and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation where I live. So we have the Bunwurrung people, the Woiwurrung up in Melbourne, Taungurung, which is up in the Golden River, which is my mob, then over to Jarjarwurrung over at Bendigo, and then down to Wadawurrung, which is Geelong, Ballarat area. So they're the 5 mobs that live around Melbourne. And we had this beautiful welcome to country ceremony that we performed every year pre-colonisation. We all had our own spot on the Yarra River, and we would come together early October every year to celebrate culture. And so that by Melbourne City Council bringing that ceremony back, this was back in 2013, where we performed for the opening of Melbourne Festival. It was in Fed Square, so it wasn't quite the same as being surrounded by trees. But they covered Fed Square in sand, and we had a fire in the middle, and it was pretty awesome. There was over 4,000 people, the public watching. They came and watched. It was a free event, and being able to connect not just with my family, with Taungurung, but connect with all of the Kulin Nation was the most amazing experience, connecting and learning from one another. And there should be more of it where we learn from each other. We shouldn't be trying to, be up against each other, shame each other. We should be, we've been through enough. I think we should just, be working together to keep our culture alive, to share it, to teach our bulbs. It's important for them to grow up with culture and grow up strong in identity.
Because you're in an interesting position where you actually are training or you actually are teaching bulbs, but you're also teaching a whole generation of workers at the same time. So it's on 2 different levels, if that makes sense.
Yes. I think we have to teach the teachers. If we want our culture to stay alive and to keep sharing our culture, we have to teach the teachers. So that they can share it. And feel comfortable with it. Because I know a lot of teachers are worried that they're going to be, disrespectful or do it wrong.
And I know a lot of teachers don't want to make it tokenistic either. Like the maths teacher going, like, Johnny's got 4 boomerangs and Peter's got 7 boomerangs. How many boomerangs do we have? Right? Or the home economics teacher, look, let's add lemon myrtle and stir. Da-da, there's your dish. It is hard, I think, if they've never been taught it and shown how to then be encouraged or compelled to actually put it into the curriculum. They don't want to get it wrong, but it is hard. So I admire all the work that you do.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And with so I'm working with Peninsula Specialist College at the moment. The wonderful Principal Trevor invited me in because he wanted to create the entryway into a welcoming space. It was just this boring brick wall.
Yeah.
And so he invited me in and we had a yarn about, what we could do with that space. And I showed him a few things that I'd done and he was like, yep, let's go with that. And then, so that started off as I spent a week in the school working with every single child
Yeah.
and had these beautiful wooden leaves um, cut out by Uncle Mick Harding, wonderful Taungurung artist.
Yeah.
And so I just hand drew some line art, Victorian line art for the children to look at to inspire them to design something on their wooden leaf. So I did that with every single student in the school. And then those that weren't able to, I've actually burnt the design in for them. And then some of the senior students actually sat there with me and I showed them and they actually burnt their own design in, which was really beautiful. So that's all going up in the entry of the
Wow.
school. Yeah. But then that just sort of extended onto, how about we do this? And it just kept going from one thing to the other that we ended up doing an art exhibition at McClelland Sculpture Park. So the whole school was involved. Everybody had representation in this exhibition. And
Yeah.
so what ended up being 1 week in the school, I've never been there for 2 terms, and it's been an amazing journey connecting with the students and the teachers,
Yeah.
sharing with them and allowing them to then feel confident to do things themselves in the classroom, which is, really important because there's not enough of us to be in every school. So, we've got to build up the confidence of the teachers to be able to continue sharing
Yeah.
culture. Yeah,
Yeah. Now we recently did a workshop together,
we
and
did.
people might not know that, but we were at the it was the Carers Cafe workshop, the conference for carers and foster carers, kinship carers, and respite carers. Yeah,
Yes.
and that was
That,
fun. That was
it,
fun.
was, it was lots of fun. Yes.
And we did the painting of the leaves, which I think a lot of carers really enjoyed and loved. Um, and I got to share my story with some of the carers. But I've never seen so much love that was at that workshop afterwards towards you for such a wonderful activity that you had people really relax by doing the artwork, if that makes sense, at the same time.
Yeah. And that's why I love doing ochre because it's all inclusive. It doesn't matter what ability you have, what age you are. There's no expectation. It's all about just connecting and being in the moment with this beautiful mineral that we have that we can access. And it has quite an effect on people. It's a amazing experience to just. I don't know whether it's just also the smell of the gum leaves, like that's quite medicinal in itself. It's quite grounding. Just if anyone gets a chance to have pick up a gum leaf, as long as it's not too dried out, and crush it up and smell the beautiful the vapors of the gum leaf. It's very grounding.
Yeah.
And if I can't do a smoking ceremony, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Just breathing that beautiful medicine.
Because I think that what people forget is that we've been using bush medicines for years and years. So I always think, and I'm not making fun of it, but I always often think that the eucalyptus oil was something like people use for Vicks vapor rub. It kind of effect because it does. I remember being younger and being told to when I wasn't well to crush the leaves and smell them.
Yep.
And I could tell that it was opening up my sinuses. It was opening up my I have asthma, and I noticed it was opening up my lung capacity. So I do believe that was a real powerful like ingredient. So even though we might think it's a bit of fun, I do believe it actually does have that medicine kind of purpose as well.
Oh, for sure. No, the Vicks, I grew up with my mum covering my chest in Vicks, and I did that to my kids. That's our modern day eucalyptus.
Yeah.
That we've all grown up with. But I actually did a workshop in a kindergarten a few months ago, and I took in some gum leaves, and the children were all sitting around, and I got them to take a gum leaf, and I talked to them about Bunjil's law, about, this gum leaf is like your passport onto country.
Yeah.
And this allows you to, take what you need from country, but you must share and you must take care of country. And I got them all to crush it up and smell it. And then afterwards, the teacher came up to me and she goes, "I've never seen them so calm." And I said, "Well, maybe try it another day where, maybe they're a bit ratty and they're not sitting still, and see if it works." Because, it does have that calming quality, that medicine. So she said, "Oh, I might need a whole branch for myself."
Yeah. You'll see her at a desk snipping away at the leaves as
Yeah.
the whole class has gone nuts, but she's calm in the corner.
Yeah. So I thought that was really funny, but yeah, it just shows that it can have that medicinal effect on people.
Yeah. That question: how do you define leadership? What does leadership look like to you?
I can tell you what leadership isn't.
Yeah, tell us what leadership isn't.
From recent events.
Yeah.
I guess I might go into that later, but I guess leadership to me is showing strength, and being a role model to people, and showing them how to stand up and be strong and be resilient and be confident, sharing your culture. So I think a good leader does all those things, and they unite people, and they're also very inclusive and provide a safe space for people to grow and feel confident and to learn. So I guess they're pretty good leadership skills to have.
Yeah. So when have you seen leadership not work?
So in my past job, so I was the lead tour guide. So being the only Kulin person in that, employed in that space, I guess I was offering a lot of my knowledge to staff, and a new staff member was employed, and unfortunately I had to pull her up a lot because what she was saying was incorrect and it wasn't true, and some of it was really inappropriate.
Yeah.
So I had to, as part of my role as the lead tour guide, I was teaching people, and I had to pull her aside at the end and go, "Oh, you can't really say this." And so she got to the point where she resigned because she couldn't work with me.
Yeah.
So the CEO told me that he'd received the email, and he then proceeded to tell me that he wasn't going to reply to that email. So instead of actually resolving whatever the issues were, and I had told him exactly what I had said, and that she was being quite inappropriate. Instead of resolving it and telling her all that, he just ignored it. So I didn't feel supported.
Yeah.
And lies were then left to be spread. So as the CEO, you should, an EO, you should be able to do that. You've got to support your staff, number one. Yeah. And if there's any issues, you've got to resolve them straight away. You can't just leave them hanging. And I felt a bit disappointed with that outcome, because, culture is really important and we've got to do it right. Yeah. We can't go around saying stuff that's incorrect and inappropriate. So that was just a bit disappointing that wasn't dealt with appropriately, I thought. because, if we're going to go out there teaching, we've got to make sure we're doing it right,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, reconciliation is a big word that gets thrown around as well. What does reconciliation mean to you?
It's definitely working together and walking together for the future on our journey. But I think people need to be genuine. You mentioned before about ticking the box. It's not about just engaging with First Peoples during NAIDOT week, because our cultural load in that week is just ridiculous. Like, we're here all year. Like, engage with us anytime you like. Engage with us as much as you can. It's not about just NAIDOT week and ticking a box. If people can be more genuine, and maybe it's education. Maybe that's the key to reconciliation. If more people are aware and educated, and maybe the truth-telling will help with that, telling the stories that actually happened, that the government have just hidden. I recently heard, was down, I think, on Gunawarra country in Victoria. I don't know if this is the exact story, but there was a group of Aboriginal people, and, she didn't tell her family this story. So this was, an elderly person that this story's come out from, that when she was younger, they were travelling and they stopped, I guess, at a property, and the farmer or the settler gave them food. And I think it was only herself and maybe one other or two other people that actually made it to where they were heading to, because that food had poison in it. You don't hear those stories because the government hides it all. So that truth-telling needs to come out, because I don't think people understand why we're still experiencing trauma.
Yeah.
Because it's really upsetting to hear those things. So.
And I don't think people realize how recent in history this stuff really actually is. So when we are talking about elders, for us, we're talking about people even born, like 1967 was the big referendum that allowed Aboriginal people to be counted in the census. So if you're an elder that's in their 60s now, that's stuff that's happened in your lifetime, if that makes sense, in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And you and me are just like the generation under that. And people might not know, because we both look really young, all right? But, straight away, that we're the next generation down, that some of our contemporaries haven't even finished year 12. Some of them haven't even finished high school. That it is really our kids and our grandkids now are the first ones that are starting to actually get to finish school, that are actually going to university. And I don't think the non-Indigenous people and workers and actually understand that, how recent that is and how that still impacts on us today.
For sure. Yep. And the impacts of, not even having a birth certificate. They don't realise, well, you want to go overseas. Well, how do you get a passport if you don't have a birth certificate?
Yeah.
Things that isn't a problem for them. Just something small like that is, a huge barrier and a challenge. And, if you don't have a birth certificate, well, how do you find your family? How do you connect back?
Yeah.
So, I suppose a lot of people haven't really thought about that either.
Yeah.
So,
now, there's a lot of young people that actually don't know much about culture at all, and sometimes don't even know what community they come from.
Yeah.
And I know that's pretty high down on the Mornington Peninsula where you are. If a young kid came to you and said, I want to know more, where would you suggest they start looking?
That's a really tricky one. I did have someone actually approach me about that, and she actually was crying. She said, I can't get help for my dad, and I said, well, do you know, whereabouts you're from? And she said, yeah, I think it was somewhere near Sydney. And I said, all I can suggest is that you go on a holiday, you go up there and you go visit the local gathering places, and you have a yarn, because someone will know someone, they will know that name, and hopefully you will find that connection. And it's about talking, sitting down and yarning with people, because, gathering places have a lot of information, and the traditional owners, I said, if you can go up there and speak to the traditional owners, they have all their history, all their ancestry, and they may be able to help you out. So, but yeah, going to gathering places is a good start. If you don't know where to go, find your local gathering place, and hopefully they can support you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And places like Koori Heritage Trust are, really supportive and help mob find their families. So I usually suggest those things.
Yeah, I think they're two really good starting points.
Yeah.
What stereotypes of Aboriginal people, or what's out there, the stereotypes, what ones would you like to see break?
Definitely the one about skin colour. As I said earlier, what is a modern day Aboriginal person in Victoria? And I guess, thinking about that, and having those conversations to break those stereotypes. What do we look like? What do we do? Who are we? And storytelling and truth telling and education is all part of that.
Yeah.
To break those things, break those stereotypes. Because, once you understand it and you learn it, then, it's easier to break those things.
Now, if I could give you a magic wand, which I've got here, there's my magic. Oh, my magic wand and $1 zillion, all right?
Yeah.
You said that you could fix something in Aboriginal affairs in Australia. What would be where would you start?
Education, definitely, and making it accessible to people. But what I would really love to do on a local level is, if I had those gazillions, I would build an art space.
And my wand.
And your wand, yes. And I would build an art space that was a safe place, so no lateral violence. Everybody's there to learn and to accept one another. And that space is there to help you to grow, learn knowledge, and to develop confidence. Art is such a wonderful therapy, and I would love to have a space like that for the youth, even get the bullwhoops in there, all different generations to come through and just sit and listen and learn from one another. Aboriginal people, we're a community. I learnt that through Tanderrum. My daughter was nonverbal up until she was 9 years of age, and she was 5 when we did our first Tanderrum. And what that taught me, I was very anxious because I knew there was going to be 4,000 of the public standing around, and I thought, if she loses, where she is, what is she going to do? How is she going to, ask for help? But what it taught me was, one of the women just took her hand and took her out, danced around the fire and brought her back. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
But it taught me that, Aboriginal people, we live in a community. It's not just the parents who bring up the bullwhoops, it's the whole community is responsible to, keep children safe and to, get them to grow up strong in culture. So that was a good learning for me, that, we are a community, and we've got to support each other.
Yeah. And art, as you say, is very inclusive, but it's very broad as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's I think when some people hear about Aboriginal people and art, they just think of art and drawing or art and painting.
And don't say dots.
Yeah, dots, yeah. But it's much more than that, because it can involve music and
for sure. And I'd love to offer all of that. I'd like to, offer them, here's a burner, here's some designs, have a go at burning, or, here's some feathers. I can show you how to make a feather flower. Just start with the basics and watch them grow and learn. But we need that space. for them to do that. We need the resources. You know, I had shed day for a while where I had friends. You know, we'd get together in the shed and we'd just sit there and do our own thing, making Indigenous art. But you know, I'd rather do it on a big scale where I can actually have all the resources and be teaching our young ones.
Yeah.
You know, so that, not that, you know, they can, well, it's up to them how they want their journey to go, but, you know, they might end up exhibiting at, you know, the National Gallery of Victoria, who knows? But you've got to be able to offer it to them first. Yeah. And, you know, the youth, there's a lot of issues. And if you can create a space like that where they can come and learn and learn how to, you know, connect to culture without drugs and alcohol,
yeah,
cigarettes and vaping, like all of the issues that are going on with our youth, you know, they had a space where they could come and, you know, do that, have elders present that they could look up to. I think you know, we could do lots in that space.
Yeah. So I'm just watching the time. So I've got a couple of little final questions. But one question I always ask people is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn today?
Yeah, have a yarn. You know, engage with your community, engage with your First Peoples in your community, and you know, and find more about what they can do to share culture, and yeah, just connect and accept one another. I think acceptance is, you know, something that we should all do a little bit more of, and have a bit of empathy.
And my final question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? What would you like to be doing?
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, I could have my big art space and I could be, you know, sharing culture with people, but I hope I'd still be doing that online. That's but with my daughter, with her intellectual disability, who knows where we will be. She takes up a lot of my time. So yeah, it'd be nice to be on a holiday. I haven't had one of them in a while.
Yeah. Where would
But
you go?
Where would
you
I
like to
go? Oh, somewhere on the river would be nice.
And I've got a wand and zillions of dollars as well to give you.
Yeah, somewhere on the river would be lovely. No people around. Yeah, and a fishing rod. That'd be good.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Hey, Sammy, I want to say thank you for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on. You know how much I love you and your work. And so I want to say thank you. And I want to say to the viewers, hey, I'll see you at the next podcast. So see you later. Thanks.
No worries. Nongujin. Thank you for having me.